Good evening, everyone. Happy Saturday. Welcome again to another episode of Real Talk Family Life, building shatterproof families one brick at a time. This program is both brought to you by Faith Tabernacle and Caribbean Evangelical Ministers. My name, Sasha Sutherland, and I'm your host for this evening. So today we continue our two-part program focused on boundaries and barriers in courtship. As usual, we encourage you to make your interventions via our Zoom chat and on YouTube as we spend the next hour focusing on identifying and addressing dysfunctional traits that might pose a challenge to healthy relationships. Tonight, we're going to focus on some case studies and get practical advice on how we address some of these issues. Our panelists tonight are Pastors Anthony Henry and Joseph Griffith, whom I invite to bring you greetings and make an opening statement about boundaries and barriers in courtship. Pastor Griffith, over to you.
Hi, good evening. Quite certain that you're familiar with me. I'm trusting that there are those of you who have never seen me, but I simply describe myself as a Christian of over 45 years, married just about 38 years, a few days from now. 2 children. Of course, I'm a pastor. I love the Lord, and I do my best to make myself available to do whatever I can to help in ministry. Not claiming to be perfect in anything, but just try to be useful. As far as my other opening words are concerned, I think this evening is pretty challenging. I remember raising the question in my house with a couple of people, and I asked my son, for example, or rather my sister first. Suppose that you were told that 2 of our nephew and nieces were getting married. She said, "What? You're going mad." I said, "So anything for you to come to the wedding, you won't go." Me, I go. I would never encourage that. So interesting to hear the response tonight. I pause.
Good night, everyone. It's good to be with you again on our Real Talk Family Life program. I have been involved with family life, my personal family life. This is over 40-something years. Had a first marriage of 22 years, and we celebrated our second marriage. We celebrated our 23rd anniversary. God has been good. Have 2 children that they are serving the Lord, grandchildren, just 2 to be baptized of the 5. 3 of them have already made commitment to the Lord. And so I trust God and I believe God that He is going to do great things. Yesterday, I received a photo from my elder sister, and she was holding her great granddaughter. A great granddaughter. So I'm trusting the Lord to get me there one of these days. God is good, but family is a part of me, and I trust that our sharing tonight would help you in your family life.
Great. So we're going to jump right in, following on from Pastor Griffith's anecdote. So our first scenario, looking at case studies tonight on boundaries and barriers, is the consideration that 2 first cousins have expressed love for each other, but they've kept this relationship a secret for many years. Now they're financially independent adults and they desire to be married. The marriage laws of their country do not prevent them from getting married, but they do not know how to get past the social barrier. What advice would you have for this couple to deal with the social barrier and any other that they may face in their relationship? Pastor Griffith.
Wow. The question is what advice? And I meditated much on this. And I do not know to what extent these people want advice. And neither can I understand to I mean, there's the challenge. They want advice. Their mind are set and they are determined. And and I do not know that I want to help them to overcome the social barrier because I thought that I saw the social barrier as the stigma that is attached with marrying people who are close to them. And I do not know that I would want to necessarily perceive or want to say to them, look, this is how you can overcome in the sense like bypass. Maybe I think we should focus on how can I deal? How am I supposed to respond? What is it or is this taboo? I can use that. Why are these unwritten laws there? And as I think on it, I would say to them, and I would probably approach it, is the first step is to try to understand why you have this taboo. That's the word. Why you have it. And the fact that they were willing to fight against it, I became quite concerned. I would want to challenge them first about to do some introspection about where they're at. That is, I would say, look, you knew for the last X amount of years that this thing was wrong. All right? Or sorry, it was not socially acceptable. You knew it. But you kept doing it all the while. Technically, you were not afraid to push these boundaries. All right? And you were also aware that this potentially pushback would affect your relationship with your family. I would probably ask them, what do they perceive a barrier as? And however they say, if they didn't come to say this one part, I would say, but you know what? I also see that barriers are not only things that can be bad that need to be gotten rid of, but they could also be some form of protection. Like you can put up a barricade to stop some person from trespassing into, like your car racing, for example, and they try to put up barricades or barriers so as to protect people from, keep them within certain safety areas. And I believe that that is a classic example of the issue of why people do not want to marry so close in family. And I also like the scenario before us. I know I'm still answering the question, but I'm going to pause. That what is coming up before us is we see the amount, what kind of word lust? How lust can cause people to be willing to transcend boundaries, irrespective of any potential trouble. Since it did not begin, I think I could pause at that moment and probably allow Pastor Henry to get in, and I hope I would have said something to get somebody in the audience to question me or challenge me a little more. So let me just pause at this moment.
So let me start with a short definition of barriers, especially as it relates to relationship. There are obstacles or challenges that hinder the smooth functioning and growth of the relationship. These barriers, they can manifest themselves in various forms and can affect communication, trust, they can affect emotional connection, and they can hinder the overall harmony between the partners. And so when we think of barriers, we think of emotional barriers. One of them would be fear and vulnerability. Hesitance to open up emotionally due to fear or rejection or judgment. And so we are seeing this type of barrier between parents and children very early in the relationship, so that they fall in love while they are still probably young, and they're hesitant to open up, talk about their emotions to family members. This can emotional barriers can also be as a result of low self-esteem, which is often the major driver behind this type of emotional barrier. And then there are cultural and value differences or barriers, conflicting beliefs or values, such as religious barriers. You have political barriers, and there may be barriers of lifestyle and differences. One of them that is common in these situations is when in the Christian home, somehow that son or daughter comes home with a person of the same sex and say, "This is my partner." Already just making mention of it because of religious beliefs and what have you and so on, a barrier is established. Simply meaning that we can no longer communicate, we are no longer somehow reaching each other, we no longer have any ties because of that mental block that we have put against each other. There can also be personal barriers, so that you have people get into relationships and realize that there are some personal barriers because goals and aspirations are different. Sometimes it's sickness where, you have one person may have issues like mental health issues, suffering from depression or anxiety and so on. And so all of that impact the relationship. And then you have trust issues, which may be a barrier. So you have straight couples, but then one person is a cheater. He or she is a person who is not, reliable because they have different partners and what have you and so on. And so that sort of an inconsistent behavior or action can create doubt and uncertainty. Then you may have one person who is so faithful but very jealous, and that causes tension and mistrust in the relationship. So the big question is, what should this couple do to cross this barrier? I think that is so important because we are talking to these two individuals, and I think the first thing that they need to do is to seek to understand the family concerns. Listen to reason. Listen to the reasoning that the family has. Understand why the family objects to their being together. And the family concerns may range from cultural, religious, and probably genetic, or to even social stigma, as Pastor Griffith mentioned. And so that you have all of these concerns on the family part, and you just should not, I shouldn't say cannot, you can, but you should not necessarily just write off all of the concerns and say, listen, we are adults, we want to get married, and so I'm not going to bother with what my parents say. One of the first things that I would suggest if you are going down this path, if the two couple are going down that path, they should be thinking about children. And one of the issues that parents would likely raise, and one of the things that I think that most people are concerned about when two people who are so close are going to get married, is their offspring. And so you need to consider genetic counseling to understand any potential health risks for future children. And more so you should do that, especially if it's a concern for the family. I would say because you are in a different generation and age where you are probably more learned and has a lot more information than your parents, I would say that you need to equip yourself with information that will address any misconceptions or misinformation that your family may have, and so you can provide accurate information on the subject. The big step is to have an open communication, family discussion. Arrange a family meeting to discuss the relationship openly. You can't keep it secretly. You're going to get married, you want to get married. As somebody say, you take the bull by the horn. And you express feelings and commitment. In that meeting, you express your feelings and commitment to each other. After all, you're adults and you should be able to let your parents know how you feel. And if need be, if you think that there is going to be a challenge in communicating your ideas to your parents, I would suggest consider a neutral, involving a neutral third party, like a family therapist or a counselor. A pastor who would understand and have open mind to the issues. Seek support. Allies within the family, very important. Seek those who, identify and seek support from family members who are more open and understanding, so that those family members who can listen to you and can assist you and share with you, seek support from them. Seek professional counseling. Engage in counseling as a couple to navigate the emotional strain and develop strategies for dealing with the family objections. So that you're adults, you want to get married. And yes, if that's your choice, there's nothing in the law that prevents you from getting married. But you want, when you are finished, at the end of the day, that you still have a family. And so above all, this is most important. You need to respect your family's feelings. So you acknowledge the family concerns and show respect for their feelings, even if they disagree with you. And there is a way to do that. In this world, we would never be able to agree with everybody, but we can respect everybody. And I think that once you respect a person's feeling and show respect for a person's feelings, accept that person wants to be God, wants to take the place of God and say, I am right and you are wrong. I am not going to listen to you. From the time you get there, the line of respect has been crossed by those individuals. And so you need not take that line with your parents. I am right, you are wrong, and I am going to have my way. You listen and you respect their feelings. You show respect for the way they feel, and you express that to them. You need patience. You need to give the family time to process the situation. And so opinions might change over time as they see the commitment and happiness of the couple. So give them time. All right. What else do I say on this? That it's very, very important that you stay with your family, you talk through the issues and help them to understand why you want to do this, and ask them to trust you. And hopefully, as adults, if they trained you well and they love you, they would want you to be happy. And so I would think that, giving them the right information, you are the one who's facing the stigma, not the parents. And so they should give you the chance, after they see where you are going, they should give you the chance to be willing to take on that commitment for yourselves.
Yes, I quite agree that like I say, I wasn't so certain myself that when I studied scenario that this couple is really ready for reconsidering. All right, because they seem as though they're set in their path. But what comes out here is the importance of communication at all levels. And for those, as even me, I assume that I imagine somehow that this was happening when they were small and they were growing up with it, you know. And it's unfortunate that I'm assuming that they didn't have that sufficient objective early discussion with adult people and maybe their family. Otherwise, if they did that, it would just see that they were very set in their path from beginning and are unmovable. So I'm going to believe that they didn't have the opportunity to have the discussion with their greater family or pastors mentioned teachers, counseling, or whatever. And I would want to know that if there were any young people listening to us tonight, that they will understand the value of that counsel. But I also want to add quickly that although not all laws are written, all right, and a lot of things that we do, sometimes we hold policies, make decisions, set boundaries, and we may do so ill-informed. I could agree with that, right? But why should we believe that those who've gone before us, that they are necessarily wrong? I think for me personally, I like if I were having a conversation with you and you say something that I am not hearing for the very first time, I might be shocked to know that what you're saying, even though it may sound funny, but I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. Believe you me, I'm going to hire it from here and I'm going to go and I'm going to explore it, right? Because I do not know everything. And I'm saying that, yes, we can have laws, we can have positions that may be ill-informed, but normally laws are there for us to learn from and to guide us along certain things and give us along certain principles how we exist in society. So, but what we see here in the case of the scenario mentioned, it is not legal. But the idea of people making decisions can go contrary to law. In other words, people actually break laws. And you can pass a law, but based on my value system, will cause me to do what I want to do. So we are learning here that even though there's laws and even though there is a custom, a cultural thing, the thing about it is that individuals will still always do what they want to do. But we must live our lives by our moral standards, which we have learned from our families, friends, and society. And I'm quoting someone here in this case. And I continue to quote. Someone says that our society is defined and regulated by values just as much as is regulated by law. So all law and all regulation don't come from that which is written. And I will say quickly that, yes, Pastor Henry was correct that one of the issues that come up in a case like this is where oh, there, I missed that point. But people decide and they must have respect. But I want to say that sometimes we need to learn to trust people and what other people say. Oftentimes, there can be something in it that we can learn. I also want to add at the same time that sometimes it might be necessary to push back. So as far as this couple is concerned, I really don't know what more I can tell this couple, but couple, understand that whenever all is said and done, if your marriage do not work, if things do not work out good for you, remember that you are walking away from your greater family and you can lose everything. I'm not saying that you must know what you want, but be very careful and be as objective as you can. I don't know if that helped, but that's my position.
Thank you. We have a real life example in the chat. Someone says they went to a family member's funeral and two persons were there who were engaged to each other and realized they were actually first cousins. They decided then and there to go their separate ways. So they made a choice that we were not doing this. Just to go back to your responses, I like what you said, Pastor Griffith, about young people understanding the value of counsel and knowing that it's there, especially with the fact that you reference them knowing or keeping the secret for many years. So again, it goes back to, in society or in families, what type of relationships are we building? Are we open enough so that children and young adults feel like they can come to us and raise concerns or say something? Or is it that our behaviors and our speech is saying we will not tolerate or even entertain something that might be different to our general beliefs? And I like Pastor Henry's position of giving the family time, but at the same time trying to have an open conversation about what is going on with this couple. So equip yourself against misinformation. I like that. Understand family concerns and involving a neutral party. So even if you feel like you won't be heard or the family will object, having a neutral person, a neutral party there is important. And then, of course, professional counseling. I think we're in a space now where we're normalizing seeking help, and it's no longer taboo. And so seeking professional help is important. If you have any questions or other comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. I don't see any on YouTube. So second case study for you pastors. My partner goes into my handbag without permission. I view it as a lack of respect for my boundaries. I've communicated it to him before. It's hard to cope with the behavior, but it also cannot be ignored. And that could be a handbag or it could be a phone. What do you say to me? Pastor Griffith is laughing, so I'm going to come to you.
All right. Another interesting thing, and let me tell you how I go about dealing with that. The first thing I ask myself, and I probably ask a lot of questions more than say much, and I would really appreciate getting some response from the crowd because I'm getting old and I need help. I ask myself, is she saying that he must ask her permission if he want to go into her bag? That's the first question I ask myself. Should he ask? In other words, it caused me to wonder, or if she mean that, then is there a chance that she will say no? Is there a chance that she will say yes? So I want to understand what she really meant when she said without permission. Then I look at the issue of the respect and boundaries that came in. And again, I asked two questions. As about the boundaries, was the boundary one of respect? In other words, I will not tolerate disrespect. Come to understand what her boundaries was. Or was it that nobody should enter into my bag without permission? Right? I was hoping that somebody would help me to clarify these things before I could go any further, because I may start wrong. Right? Just one, two more. Why does the man feel that he should go into her bag? What was the reason why he might want to go into the woman's bag? Again, I got lost, and I could glad for some help. And I asked two follow-up questions to that. Could there be any legitimate reason for a man wanting to go into a woman's bag? I repeat that. Could there be any legitimate reason for a man wanting to go into a woman's bag? I asked the earlier question is, and did she, I didn't ask this one, sorry. Did she give him any reason why he might want to go into the bag? Let me just stop because we don't begin. I pause.
Before Pastor Henry jumps in, I like your questions, right? Because when I read this case study, I figure I leave my handbag all over and it's almost free game for everybody in here. If my daughter wants something, she goes in, But I can see why someone might not want someone to just go in their bag without permission. And I like the fact that the word respect was being used there. Because even though things are free for all, you'd still like somebody to say, well, can I go into your wallet and take $20? Can I, what if I have a gift in there for our anniversary and I'm trying to hide it, not for the wrong reason? So I think this question is bordering on trust and respect. And did we establish these boundaries beforehand? But all of these are speculations. It's a very open-ended question. And I think the questions you posed are good ones for the audience to consider, especially persons who might be in that position. Have you established boundaries before? Is there a trust issue in this relationship? Did we speak about, boundaries as opposed to barriers? Because boundaries are established by us. And did we communicate? Going back to that important word, did we communicate it? But I'm going to pause there and ask Pastor Henry to weigh in.
So as a counselor, I treat an issue like this like the unwanted branches on a tree. You can cut them and you can continually cut the branches. The tree will continue to throw branches. And oftentimes when people speak to you about these issues, they're actually dealing with the branches, with what you can see. The root of the tree is where you need to turn your attention. And it takes more time. It will take more time and effort to destroy the root of the tree than the branches. But when you are done, the problem will be resolved likely forever. So that, as you mentioned, Dr. Sutherland, what I think is the real problem here is a trust issue. And one needs to, when one thinks of the situation, when I think of the situation, I am seeing a trust issue on both sides. If the guy is going into the handbag and it's making the lady uncomfortable, or vice versa. I'm not sure who wrote the question, I can't remember who wrote the question, whether it was a man.
Girl. Sound like girl.
Well, yeah, she has a handbag, yes, so has to be a lady. So if she is made uncomfortable for going when the gentleman goes into the handbag, my question would be, what is it that she has to hide? So what is there to hide in the handbag? As Dr. Sutherland says, probably a gift for the anniversary. Probably there is something that is not to be revealed. And then why is the young man going into the handbag? Why is the man going into the handbag? What does he hope to find in the handbag? Right? And so could it be an issue? And you did mention cell phone, and I think that is one of the things now that probably would replace the handbag. I think that would be probably more a real life situation where one person is seeking to go into the phone of another and what have you and so on. So that if it's a trust issue, then we need to deal with that. And you start in dealing with trust issues by having an open communication, honest dialogue. Engage in an open, honest discussion about the issue without blame or defensiveness. So I'm not we are going to talk about this. I'm not blaming you for going into my handbag, and you are not going to tell me that that I don't trust you and this sort of a thing. So that we are going to start the conversation on a note of openness. There is need for what is called active listening. And so the lady has the complaint, and so she's the one who is going to talk. So the man must listen to his partner's perspective without interrupting. Let me hear you out. Let me hear what is causing you to feel uncomfortable when I go into the handbag. Let me understand what I'm doing, because from my perspective, I may not see anything wrong in it. It's the community where we came from. I am accustomed walking in, accustomed picking up my sister's phone, my mother's phone, looking at their messages, what have you, and so on. And so you need to listen to the person who is making the complaint, and you need to show empathy and understanding, because your background, your family is not the same as the family from which the young lady is coming from. Try to see the situation from your partner's point of view. And so listen carefully, try to understand what the person is saying. And more so, one of the things that I say to individuals when we are talking about this whole thing about listening, don't listen to hear, just to hear what the person is saying, but listen to understand what the person is saying. And even at a higher level, listen to feel what the person is saying. Listen for the words that conveys the person's feelings and motivations, because in so doing, that can help to build the gap. Ask questions to clarify any misunderstanding or assumptions. Better yet, reflect what the other person has said in your words to better understand what was said. For example, in this case, the person says to you, well, I don't like you to go into my handbag because XXXX. And so you say, my understanding, your response can be, my understanding of what you said is that opening your handbag is like a stranger entering your bedroom without knocking. Exactly. And so you start to understand. So you're understanding where the person is at because of what they said of what has been said to you, the privacy that is needed. As far as you are concerned, privacy has nothing to do with a handbag. As far as your level of concern, privacy is when I'm in my room and you just barge into my room without knocking. And that is for a stranger. So that you are conveying the person's feelings in your words. And so hopefully that would bring you to a place where you can find common ground. Focus on the values and the goals you both share. What is the common ground you have on trust issues? Because it seems to be an issue of trust. It seems to be a problem of trust. What is the common ground? What is it that you share about trusting each other? And this common ground can serve as a foundation for resolving the issue. Common value in this case will be trust. Do we trust each other? Right? When that question comes up, then you're going to know if you are dealing with the problem. Do you trust me? Is it that you trust me do you trust me for going into your handbag, or don't you trust me? Is it really a trust issue, or is just that somehow it's a taboo on your part? You do not like somebody to search into your handbag. And when you're able to resolve those areas, whatever the situation is, you should be willing to compromise and find middle ground where both partners feel respected and heard. That is what is important. So in emergencies, you could come to a conclusion on the issue that for emergency purposes, I will go to your handbag, and emergency reasons alone, something is happening, I have to get a key from your handbag, I have to get something out of your handbag because it's an emergency, then I will go there. You agree on those kind of things in the discussion so that in the future, going forward, you do not go into the handbag without the reason that you have agreed upon. It's important that you practice patience and forgiveness. Understand that overcoming barriers take time and effort from both partners. And one of the things that is needed here is that you have to be willing to forgive past mistakes and focus on moving forward. one of the things that keep that barrier before us is the whole idea of unforgiveness. Now, you've spoken about the problem, and somehow we get back into the issue, or something happens that I went back into the handbag a little later on. And then 6 months after that, we have dealt with this, I went back into the handbag. And I am going to learn that 6 months ago that I did this, and we decided that you shouldn't do it, and you did it again. And sometimes I tell myself that such people do not know what it means to love. And so you can take it from a trust issue to the biblical concept of love, because if God were to deal with us that way, he would not, it's not a way that he would express his love to us. And somebody did say anyway that love covers a multitude of sins, or love keeps no records of wrong. And so that be willing to forgive the mistakes of the past, and always focus on what you are going to do going forward in issues like these. Come up with a plan as to how we are going to resolve the problem. One of the things I would suggest for this couple is that pray and ask for guidance, because the matter may not be just about the handbag. It could be about some other issue. But when you have an issue like this, pray and ask for guidance and strength. The wise man says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Proverbs 3:5-6. So that as a couple, when you meet to resolve this area, make sure that whatever decision you come to, that you take it to the Lord in prayer together, which would show a sense of unity and which help to build the relationship.
Look, in addition to Pastor Henry's sound counsel, I want to now all we already recognize that trust is there, but there's another element, or maybe one too, that really touched me a lot. All right. And I smiled when the pastor talked about the going into the bedroom, and he mentioned specifically stranger. And in my scenario, I would have used that I would feel out of place if I go at either one of you house and walk into your bedroom. Whoa, I the stranger, right? But how dare my wife tell me don't push the bedroom door? You know what I mean? When she really want me out, and that don't happen because our door don't get locked. You know, our bathrooms get locked. So that's my house. And I'm good with you, doctor, that my everything is being exposed. So I agree that everybody different. But here's the dimension I want to bring to it. Don't we, and I've asked a lot of questions, don't we invariably surrender some degree, and I qualify it, some degree of privacy when we come together? And I really want to hear, but didn't anybody hear me? But, and I still want to get it solved. Don't we, or should I say, listen to me, man. Once you get into a relationship, you got to be ready to surrender some degree of some degree of privacy. That is one. The other factor is I discover that down the road, the sisters say I am afraid of continuing this relationship. And then I said to myself, but wow, that idea of fear, that's a perfect barrier again. And then I say, you know what? All these things seem to be accumulating. And I'm seeing that when we do not address these barriers, that they can become cumulative, they can build up and then become big. The other railway issue that don't seem so obvious that I think we can agree is that not only do we have an issue of trust, but I suggest is an issue of transparency. Someone defined the transparency, or in speaking about transparency, says this, and I quote, transparency in the relationship refers to honesty, openness, the willingness to share thoughts, feelings, and information with your partner. It involves being truthful about your emotions, your intentions, your actions, and any other relevant aspect of your life. Transparency is crucial for the building of trust, fostering effective communication, and maintaining relationship. Now, I would add quickly that somebody says, but how do we go about dealing with these barriers that come up in our life? How do we deal with them? And somebody somewhere said, you know what? If people will understand, simply resort to play. And this is somebody in counseling and marriage in that kind of area. Play. Yes, like children, play. And the argument is maybe too many of us as adults have forgotten the rule, the benefits of prayer. So I want to pause again there. Perhaps somebody got something to say, but I'm saying the problem in this whole thing is that this family or this couple has an issue and it's a trust with transparency. And I am saying that too many people and a lot of people, even maybe some of you in this very meeting tonight, the problems we got is lack of transparency. We got bank accounts that are secret. We got secret things that we just do. And they got a lot of things we hide from one another, and the people and we partners don't know. I pause.
I think that's an excellent point, Pastor Griffith, and so many things are coming out, are coming to mind. So let me deal with the first one. Understanding that we're talking about boundaries and barriers in a relationship and how we resolve the challenges. That's why the case studies are presented that way. But for those of us who might be on a call where the last line said it's hard to cope with the behavior, but it also cannot be ignored, and might be in a relationship where despite ongoing communication between the two partners, maybe with a third party, and that behavior persists, it could possibly raise a red flag about some kind of controlling or unhealthy behavior. So we're not saying that you shouldn't have a red flag about particular behaviors. We're talking about how we resolve issues or concerns about boundaries and barriers in a relationship in a healthy way. But if you have persisted in trying to deal with the situation and trying the active learning and trying communication, and what you are signaling, it may not be about a handbag, but it might be about the cell phone, and it has become a trust issue or controlling behavior issue, signifying some kind of unhealthy behaviors, you may potentially have a partner that you'd want to not just take before the Lord, but take towards someone who is a counselor and seek not just legal, but spiritual counsel in that light. But Pastor Griffith, I do agree with you that we do have challenges with transparency. And I think that's because we tend to have up a lot of the walls, and we haven't done what Pastor Henry said earlier about, absolving someone from what we perceive to be a sin against us. And so 3 months later, 6 months later, we're saying things like, but you always do this. So we haven't let go or discounted that wrong and given the person the opportunity to do it anew or to have a fresh start. And so you start this cycle that none of you have chosen to end. And at some point, somebody has to say, as Pastor Henry would tell us, you have to lose so that we can win. So I just wanted to make that distinction for everybody on the call, that we're trying to talk about resolving boundaries and barriers in a healthy way, but it is not to misguide or to say that there aren't some behaviors that are potentially unhealthy in relationships. And you have to, with wisdom and with prayer, determine, which path those behaviors are. So go ahead, Pastor Nancy. You were about
before you go on, let me add this here quickly, and it might be important. And this is not my material here that I'm going to mention right now, right? Because I want to underscore again the value of transparency, because this scene, and I thought I'm referring to somebody here, I mean now, and they're giving you some reasons why transparency is important. It builds trust. It promotes communication. It strengthens emotional intimacy. It it prevents misunderstanding, encourages mutual respect, right? Let me stop at 5 points. I can say it again, It builds trust, promotes communication, strengthens emotional intimacy, prevents misunderstandings, and encourage mutual respect. My goodness, if that person is an authority and they talk about all those things, is this not all the things that we in fact really want? Isn't it?
No, probably not. You see, when my neighbor builds a barrier, he has his reasons to putting up his barrier. And I do not have any right, as much as I like to have an open fence and an open yard, I do not have any right to break down the man's barrier. And so what may be a barrier for me, as we spoke last week, may be a boundary for the gentleman who lives next door. The same thing holds in relationships. And we are talking about something, maybe a triviality about a handbag or a cell phone. But if that person establishes a boundary with you and say, listen, I need my privacy as your wife. I need my privacy when I go to the bathroom. I don't care. I don't care. You have no right. You have no rights to be God to take away that privacy from the lady. Okay. And so if the lady claims that her handbag, not because you are married to her, not because you're in a relationship, and the thing is, these two people are not married. You understand what I'm saying? They're not married. They are in a relationship. And so the lady is saying, listen, it seems to be a simple matter, but what happens when I get married, as it were? Where is it going to go? I mean, will I have any privacy? If I ask you that my handbag be private, and you are thinking that you can go into it when you want and do what you want, then am I going to become yours? Convenience. What rights am I going to have in this relationship? So she has a right to reconsider. And I'm saying to individuals, whereas you want to be transparent, whereas you want to trust, and some of these things can create transparency and trust. The key of the matter is that you have to get to the root of the problem. So you have to determine whether the branches is the handbag. You have to determine what is at the bottom of the handbag. Not literally, no.
Yeah.
Is at the bottom of the story in the handbag. Is it a trust issue? Is it a transparency issue? What is causing the problem? Is it a psychological problem? It could be a psychological problem with that handbag. And so you have to understand the issue, and then you have to be willing to work with the person. And that's what I'm saying, that you go through this process of talking and sharing and communicating and helping to understand what the person is saying. Give the person the opportunity to explain. Sometimes we don't do that. We have our own concept and we have our own ideas. And when the person is talking, we are listening to give an answer or a defense to what the person is saying, instead of trying to understand and feel how the person is feeling. And so I'm saying, change our attitude in situations like these. Try to get to understand. So somebody says that you're offending them, try to understand the situation.
Now, I want to make sure, in my opinion, that before we leave this program, just like boundaries, I believe that there's some boundaries that I set for myself, meaning I will not do or go certain place. But then there is another boundary that I set for people, meaning I will not let Dr. Sutherland cuff me again. All right? I can't control your life, but I will not let you encroach
but you
my
see,
space.
I'm going to hold you on that one. That example, I'm going to hold you on it.
All right. And I also want to emphasize the idea about boundaries in the idea of those things that make relationships dysfunctional or non-functional or whatever word you say. And and hold me beside, particularly in that context, those barriers that were against me having a good relationship. Because, and I said earlier, I never went too fast, where I was trying to say that some barriers are excellent and need to be put up. But in my context here, I want to deal with those barriers that are worrying against us. But it is truly extremely important that we understand that there are things that can come into our lives that can work against that wholesome relationship. And I said earlier that if we don't deal with them, they can accumulate. They can get heavier and heavier. And I want to repeat again that one of the important things that seem, and I quoted someone just now, that seems to be very important is how can we be as transparent as we possibly can, or do we think it makes us too vulnerable? I think it seems as though that we must understand that ultimately the aim is the two shall become one. And in the process of the two becoming one, it means that there's some, and I qualify carefully, there's some degree of privacy that we must be willing to surrender. And the last thing I say here is that sometimes we can be so obstinate with our position that it explains why some of we remain lonely forever. I pause.
Thank you. So we're just about at the end of the program. I don't see any other comments in Zoom or on YouTube. So I'm going to ask you, pastors, what steps should couples take to overcome intentional or unintentional breaching of boundaries or barriers in the relationship? What steps can couples take to overcome intentional or unintentional breaching of boundaries or barriers in the relationship? Pastor Griffith.
No, I'm quite certain that there are a lot of steps that can be made. We talk about transparency, we talk about being open, and I earlier would have mentioned the idea of play, right? And again, this is from my research, and I'm not taking any credit for it. And therefore, I'm going to propose one main solution that can help. I would mention it, but play, I'll go back there again. And it has a lot of benefits that people should consider doing it, even though we are adults. I know that there are a lot of reasons why we do not find time for play. We might say that we ain't got energy, that because we're not been taking care of ourselves. So it seems that we need to find time to take care of ourselves. We can't just keep saying sometimes or one of these days and we can't find the time. We gotta put it on schedule. In other words, we got some barriers, we gotta find time to be able to come and discuss them. And even if we were in the act of playing prayerfully, perhaps we would find the time, and then we'd be a little tired, and we sit down and talk with the spirit going on, we can easily deal with it. Do not be afraid to play because it make you feel silly. It can't. I am quite certain that when we were courting, we played to some degree, all right? And it don't have to be competitive all the while. It can be, find something different that it ain't gonna be competing that kind of way where somebody feel that they always, you know what I mean? So my suggestion here is, like I said earlier, it ain't gonna be costly, expensive, but let us find more time to have fun. And once we keep that fun atmosphere, we kind of break the ice and we facilitate better communication, everything else. So my solution would be to find time to have fun together. I pause.
So let me just repeat some of the things that I mentioned here, Dr. Neffin and Dr. Sutherland, in answering this question. Please excuse me. Open communication, honest dialogue, have active listening, seek to understand, as Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Find common ground, practice patience and forgiveness, and above all, pray together. So if you do that, you should be able to resolve whatever barriers may come up during the relationship.
Thank you both very much. And 8:33, we made it on time. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I want to thank you for the comments earlier. We do want to encourage you to be here with us next week. I'm going to hand over to Pastor Henry, but we did receive a number of questions and comments from our participants, which we hope to answer over the coming week. So we invite you to join us for a Q&A session based on comments, queries, concerns that you would have submitted to us. Pastor Henry, I'm going to hand over to you to make any additional announcements and to close us out this evening.
Okay, so on a closing remark on the subject, barriers are real, and I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible. Barriers are real. They can weaken any relationship, but they're often at times meant to make us wiser and stronger. Sometimes we must take the time, even if it means writing nothing of importance in the sand. This should give us enough time to see our neighbor's reason for putting up a fence. And we should do that before we go breaking it down. Barriers are often meant to protect the one who built it from harm. Nelson Mandela understood this principle in dealing with apartheid. When he came to power, he knew that using the sledgehammer would only cause his neighbors to reinforce their racial segregation. He employed a truth and reconciliation team that brought both sides to the table. South Africa is better off today for his wisdom. And he borrowed some of his principles from the teachings of our Lord Jesus Christ. Let me leave 3 of them for you. Matthew 5:43-44. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Matthew 5:23-24. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister, and I put in words here, has a barrier against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and talk about the barrier. The Bible says be reconciled. Talk about the barrier with them, and then come and offer your gift. And finally, Matthew 6:14-15. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins. And so thank you again for joining us. And I trust that as you put some of the words that we have shared this evening with you into practice, whatever the barrier may be in your relationship, that you would find the strength and you would find the help in overcoming those barriers, and that God will make you a stronger family. And a stronger family, if you're in church, will make a stronger church and will make our world a better place to live in. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Sutherland. And thank you, Pastor Griffith, again for being with us this evening, and all of you who have joined us. Pastor Samuel, I think I'm seeing you in the WGM. Nice having you also. I'm not sure if we have any other pastors. I've not been able to look through the list, but all of you have joined. We have some folk from the United States. Nice having you also on the program, some from here in Barbados and in Trinidad. All of you, Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening.
Good evening. Good evening to everyone on YouTube as well.
Good evening.
Yes.
Really good evening, folks.
Good
Good evening, sir.
evening, Brother George.